Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. I'm solo this week as Josh Mansfield and his wife Megan have welcomed Oliver Mansfield to the world, and so he will be out for, we'll see. He's going to be going back to work in his full-time job pretty soon, so he will be back here on the show sooner rather than later. But of course, from all of us, congratulations to him, and super excited. He actually was with me, surprisingly, for the React show Sunday night live in our Discord for subscribers as we broke down everything that happened at the WACO Annual Charity Open, which of course we'll be talking about today. Big show. We've got WACO talk, ratings update talk, some really interesting stuff going on in this month's ratings update, and a little bit about the cut line at WACO. We'll also be joined a little later in the show by Joey Taralson, who is the head of community at Microsoft, who put together this sponsorship deal, Microsoft Teams at the Preserve, which we mentioned last week. So we will dig into that a little bit later. All right, WACO, what a tournament. I mean, this was just an absolute blast. Definitely recommend getting a subscription, checking out the Reacts, where we go deep on many topics. Kristen Tattar picks up where she left off. An exceptional round 3. She makes up 11 strokes. She comes in trailing Ella Hansen by 6 shots, leaves the day with a 5-shot lead, and kind of just cruise control into the finish as she wins her first event of the year in her first tour stop of the year. Meanwhile, over in MPO, Gannon Buhr holds on to win. He had a lead going into the final round, and it looked through the front 9 like he was kind of in control, but a little bit of a hiccup in kind of the early back 9. He gets a time warning and then has a dead center putt splash out, and hits a tree with his next shot on the drive. It's just not looking sharp. Meanwhile, Nicholas Antila is going on a crazy birdie streak on the chase card and birdie 6 in a row to not only take a lead, but take a 3-shot lead at one point. And it's looking like Buhr, who's 2 or 3 holes behind, is, he's still in it, but he's going to have to really pick it up. And he does just that. He picks it up. Antila opens the door by bogeying on 17. He finds the OB green. And then at that point, it kind of ends up becoming a battle between 2 guys on the chase card, Luke Humphreys and Gannon Buhr. Humphreys has the advantage going into the final hole with a 1-shot lead after Buhr hits an insane 60-footer on hole 17 to get the birdie with Luke, 15 feet from the pin. Easy birdie for Humphreys. So they go to 18, which is a hole that, because of its length, favors Buhr in terms of getting a birdie. So Humphreys has a 1-shot lead. Buhr is tied with Antila going into that final hole. Antila's in the clubhouse at 36 under. And Luke Humphreys, very nervous, really for the first time it felt like in the whole tournament, looks very nervous on the tee shot and total grip lock, and ends up getting the drive through clean between a tree, 2 trunks of the tree that split. And his second shot, though, he maybe tries to bite off too much. Maybe he's just nervous, but he sends it out of bounds on a skip, and it opens the door for Gannon, who had a clean tee shot, fine, nothing spectacular, but put himself in a position about 500 feet out to send one onto the green. So he just launches an absolute bomb, and he's calling for the disc to clear the trees. Get over it, get over, and it does, and it skips up onto the green, and he makes the putt, and that was it. No playoff, and just a really spectacular bit of golf down the stretch. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch the Jomez. Really exciting stuff, because it wasn't just that there was this battle at the top. There was just a lot of good disc golf happening. Nate Sexton's laying down rollers. Everybody's knocking down putts from all over the place. This is just the this is why we watch. I think WACO is a great example of what makes watching pro disc golf so fun, especially down the stretch, with a tight tournament. Just an awesome finish and really clutch performance from Gannon, who was really looking shaky in the middle of that back nine, and then picked it up to birdie almost all of the final holes. And that was enough, including that just monster putt on 17, to get him to the finish line with a one-shot victory over Nicholas and Luke. Notably, Gannon finishes with his strokes gained putting above his strokes gained from tee to green. 9.29 strokes gained putting to lead the tournament, with the majority of that coming from his Circle 2 putting, over 5 strokes gained Circle 2 putting. He went 11 for 25. That's good for 44%. And, not just that, but the clutch factor. I mean, he was just hitting some colossal putts in that final round. But, he only made the one Circle 2 putt in the final round, but it was the one that counted the most on 17. So ultimately, he goes 9 strokes gained putting, and he goes just 6.5 strokes gained tee to green with the top player in that category, Joel Freeman, at almost 14. This is a very rare thing to see. The last time we saw it at a DGPT kind of standard event was from Gannon at Idlewild last year. And so, that's just how good he is on the green, that he's able to actually win tournaments because of his putting rather than just because of the performance tee to green, which, by and large is the way people win tournaments. It's because they're playing great off the tee and on approach. It's just quite rare to see that those numbers are even comparable to each other, let alone that you're going to see it exceed on the putting side of things. But, that's what happens when you shoot 44% from Circle 2 and you're giving yourself a lot of looks. So, Gannon was had 25 looks in Circle 2. And that might have been the highest at the tournament. A couple guys at 24, Cole Redolin, Emerson Keith. I'm kind of scrolling down the stats. By the way, PDGA Live now has aggregated stats. We love to see it. Connor O'Reilly also had 25. So, basically, Gannon was giving himself looks from deep. And, he was not even close to being the best in Circle 1 in regulation. He was second in Circle 2 in regulation behind Mason Ford, who finished 4th. But in Circle 1 in regulation, he was at 53%, which was 10% off the best. That was still pretty good. He was still in the top 20. But he was giving himself a lot of Circle 2 looks, and the thing is he was cashing them in. And that's really the difference with a player like Gannon, who can actually capitalize on Circle 2 looks in a way that other players just really cannot. Pretty spectacular stuff, and just an awesome finish. So, meanwhile, Kristen over in FPO, maybe she looked like she had a little bit of, I don't want to say nerves, not at all. Rust would be the right word to start. No surprise. She barely had a chance to practice these courses. She had to fly over from Europe and deal with the jet lag. She said that in her practice rounds, her arm was getting sore. And so her first 2 rounds they weren't bad, but they weren't spectacular. She was in the mix. But she ends up being, 6 shots back going into round 3, at which point she puts together a brilliant 7-under round. She's, hits 1 of 3 Circle 2 putts. Her putting was really the weak spot for the entire weekend. She ends up, above average, but really the difference here, strokes gained tee to green, 23, almost 24. The only people who were even in the ballpark with her were Henna, Evelina, Natalie Ryan, and Haley King. So besides that, Kristen really separates with that tee to green performance. She actually ends up in the negative in Circle 1 putting because of particularly those first 2 rounds being that bad. But it didn't matter because that round 3 was so good. And Ella Hansen, meanwhile, who was the leader coming into that round, had a terrible round. She had an absolutely terrible round, only 22% Circle 1 regulation. And, it just feels like we see the same story playing out in FPO week after week. Kristen is not always just totally nails. She's going to have rounds where she's very good, if not, superb. And she's going to have rounds where she's more at the level of everybody else. The problem is the other players on tour do not seem to be able to find that higher gear with any kind of consistency. And, I was actually interested after this weekend in looking at, is Kristen actually playing not only at a higher average level, but is she playing more consistently near her average? That is to say that she has a lower standard deviation than her opponents. And so I actually did it. I ran the numbers. And I'll put it up on the screen for the YouTube folks, and I'll read them off for those who are just listening on the podcast. There's nothing really to see there when it comes to standard deviation. Kristen's standard deviation is 25 ratings points. So that means about 2/3 of her rounds are going to be within 25 points of her rating, above or below. And about 95% of her rounds are going to be within 50 points of her rating, above or below. And when I pulled the same numbers for the other top rated players right now, that's Missy Gannon, Owen Scoggins, Haley King, and Holland Handley. Missy's standard deviation was 23. Owen's was also 25. Haley and Holland's were 26. Which, ultimately shouldn't be surprising. The level of variance should, over a large sample size like this, and I used currently rated rounds, basically. I threw out the DGPT Championship stuff because it had some really weird outliers and things. But otherwise, I used all the rounds, including Throw Pink and some other rounds that are not technically rated, back to last March. So essentially 1 year of sample. And it shouldn't be a surprise that players generally average about the same around their rating. Maybe there are outliers to be found, but at the top of the leaderboards, the story of why Kristen is better is that her average level of play is higher. It's not that she is, always playing at right around 1,000 rated. It's that she averages right around 1,000 rated. And other players, just their average performance is worse. And that means that it can feel like we're watching them play poorly when they have a chance to beat Kristen. But that's just because their average performance is lower. So, is there a clutch factor here? Is there something about trying to chase in the final round that's pressing, making players press and maybe not convert on their opportunities as much? Maybe. But I think statistically what you're going to see is that on longer events like WACO, which was a 4-round tournament, or Worlds, which is a 5-round tournament, Kristen's higher average level of play simply tends to win out. And it's really that her average is so much better than other players' average, and that's why she's been so dominant. It's because day in and day out, round in and round out, she can go out there and drop a 1030 rated round, and other players don't. Maybe they have that ceiling, but they don't hit it as often as Kristen, and their worst rounds tend to be worse. And so that's the story. Kristen's average round rating over the last year is 996. Now, that is not what her rating is. This is not the ratings calculation. They double more recent rounds. There's a bunch of stuff. They drop particularly bad rounds. So this is just a raw average over the last year, 996. Speaking of ratings, we got the ratings update. So let's talk about Kristen. She had an opportunity in the final round with a really good round to get to 1,000 rated and become the first FPO player to cross that threshold. She did not get there. She is 999 rated. That is a new high watermark for FPO. And she now has the next month to try to get to 1,000. So the math is pretty straightforward. If you look at what's going to drop off of her ledger from, the last March, basically, her dropped rounds average approximately 990. So she loses some pretty bad rounds, but she also loses some good doubled rounds. It comes out in the wash to be about 990, which obviously is good because that's below her current rating. What it means is that if she averages right at 1,000, maybe slightly higher, like 1,001, she's going to get there. The PDGA rating rounds up. So if she gets to 999.51, she's going to get to 1,000. She has obviously a tremendous opportunity to do that. She is scheduled to play in the next month before the next ratings update, the Open at Austin, U.S. Women's, Texas State's, and then an A tier at Persimmon Ridge. So there's already been some chatter online. Is it a good idea for her to play that A tier if she's got an opportunity to get to 1,000 rated? It might not be. It's a much weaker field. If she goes out there and she's got a 12-shot lead with 36 holes to play, is she really going to keep her foot on the gas? Could that derail 1,000 rated? Whether that's something that she even cares about, I don't know. But let's see what happens at the next 3 tour stops. You've got Open at Austin, U.S. Women's, and Texas State's. If she averages at right around 1,000, she's going to have an awesome opportunity to get to that 1,000 rated mark and, really cement herself even further as a generational talent, one of the greatest players of all time in the division, if not, with another huge season this year, perhaps establishing herself as the best to do it. I think people are starting to feel that, especially as Paige Pierce's stature has diminished recently. But obviously Paige has done it for a long, long time, and Kristen's only done it for a couple of seasons. But big chance here to get to 1,000. And who knows, if it had been a closer race at WACO and she was chasing on the final day, she might have gotten there in this update. But as it is, 999. Other things to note from the ratings update. Gannon Buhr is now the number 3 highest rated player in the world behind Calvin Heimberg and Eagle McMahon. He has passed Ricky Wysocki. Buhr went up by 2 points. Ricky dropped by 2 points. And so Gannon is now number 3 in the world and maybe marching towards number 1. Like what odds would you need to bet on Gannon to be number 1 at some point this season? Eagle's out, which, we'd have to look at the math of his recent rounds to see how that is playing out. But when he comes back, his rounds are going to have a high, they're going to be magnified. So if he kind of comes back a little rusty, we're going to see his rating drop. Calvin's hurt. He didn't play especially well at chess.com. And Gannon obviously is playing fantastic, coming off of wins now at Memorial, a big A tier, and then at WACO. So Gannon moving up in the world. And another milestone, Paul McBeth is now below the 1040 rating mark for the first time since February 2013. More than 10 years, McBeth has been 1040 or better. Of course, McBeth setting the all-time high as a player at the over 1060 mark. But, from last season, some poor play to start the year, it's starting to weigh on him, and he's down to 1037 rated. Doesn't mean that he will stay there. Certainly, you can imagine if he gets 100% healthy that he's going to climb back up into the 1040s. We know that he has that level in him. And but for now, we're seeing the eventual clarity in the numbers in the ratings for McBeth's drop-off over the last year. And so, maybe a little too early to call it the end of an era, but it's certainly a notable milestone that he has fallen below that 1040 mark. Pretty interesting stuff overall. Some discussion about WACO and the level of play. WACO is a very interesting tournament. And when you look at the leaderboard, particularly in MPO, you've got Luke Humphreys, Mason Ford, Greg Barsby, Casey White, Nate Sexton, all in the top 10. Very interesting tournament here. And maybe I kind of thought with the addition of the Lake Waco course, which, by the way, we talked a bunch about Lake Waco and our thoughts on it in the subscriber bonus segment Inside the Circle. So I'll refer you there if you want to hear us discuss that. I thought with the addition of that it might kind of neutralize some of the quote-unquote fluky aspects of Waco, because Brazos Park East it's a really good course. It's a really cool course, but is not very long and doesn't require a great deal of distance in order to be successful. It's more about accuracy, shot shaping, and really hitting landing zones effectively. And so we've seen a high degree of players of lower ratings win this tournament in the past compared to a lot of tour events, unusual top 10s. And we kind of see that again, even though we have this Lake Waco course, which definitely required more distance. But we saw that there were options for players who didn't have a huge arm to attack the course effectively. I mean, look at Nate Sexton, for instance. Never been the longest thrower, but and probably has lost some distance as he's gotten a little bit older. But he was laying down awesome rollers and getting plenty of distance out of the critical shots. So I think Lake Waco hasn't really changed the complexion that much of what this tournament is, which is one of the rare tournaments on tour where if you don't have 500 feet of distance, that you can still be really competitive. Maybe we're going to see big seasons from some of these players, so it won't feel so surprising when we look back on this in 6 months. But for now, it does feel like there's more opportunities for all kinds of different players to be successful at Waco. And so that's what we see. Doesn't mean that the cream still doesn't rise to the top. I don't think it's a big surprise to see Ganna Burr, Nicholas Antela, Anthony Barella up near the top of the leaderboard. And you've got other big heavy hitter names like Kyle Klein, Ricky Wysocki inside that top 10. But certainly some names we don't typically see in the top 10. Shout out to all the Jomez boys, by the way. Yuli and Germ coming in at 18th and 21st, respectively. And so really putting up a nice tournament across the board. The cut line, by the way, was there was a bit of discussion about it. We saw a post, Simon Lizotte posted over on his YouTube channel about missing the cut. And he wrote, after 3 long rounds on 2 tough courses, I find myself in 76th place, missing the cut and not being allowed to play on Sunday. I'm pretty sure that's a first for me. I'm also pretty sure the feeling of missing a cut is really frustrating and annoying. And he basically said that he felt like he played pretty well and still didn't make the cut. Similar sentiment from Jennifer Allen over on Instagram. She said, I threw some great lines through the trees and fixed my mistakes in round 3 to close with pars, but it wasn't enough. A couple poorly executed holes each round unfortunately kept me from making the cut. The talent in FPO is so great now that mistakes have to be kept to a minimum. Hoping to do that in Austin. So was this different? Was it in fact a different story this at Waco in terms of the quality required to make the cut? I checked it out. If you shot 1021 rated or worse through your first 3 rounds in MPO, you didn't make the cut. 1021 did not make the cut. Over in FPO was 944. Compared to Portland Open and Ledgestone, which were the 2 Elite Plus events last year that had a cut, I didn't include Worlds because there's so many more players that play in that tournament, including many, many lower rated players. It didn't feel like a fair comparison. But the Portland Open cut lines were 1015 and 933, and the Ledgestone cut lines were 1009 and 944. So certainly for MPO, seeing that cut line be up at 1021, that is maybe, I didn't go back deep into the history books, but that's probably the highest that it's ever been. That's probably the highest rating we've ever seen in MPO not make the cut. For FPO, probably near the highest ever, matching Ledgestone last year. I think there's a very good chance that those are going to be the high water mark, and if you go back in time, you're not going to see anything better than that. I mean, the quality of FPO play has risen so much in the last, 3-4 years even. So pretty interesting, and probably a trend we're going to see continue. It is not good enough to shoot 1,000 rated golf anymore. It's just really not. In fact, it's almost like, even though for amateur players, the 1,000 rated mark is like this touchstone, this thing that everybody wants to get to. And it's like the sign that you're a great player. It is true. You're a great player if you shoot 1,000, right? If you get to 1,000 rated, you're a great player. But it is no longer enough to be competitive on tour. It used to be that if you were 1,000 rated, you were cashing every tournament. Now you literally will not cash. So we could see this, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of years we see a tournament where 1030 isn't good enough to make the cut. That's how good these young players coming up are. And it's pushing guys, like we heard from Jerm in the press conference last week. He's like, my rating's been about the same for the last 5 years, but I keep falling further down the leaderboard because everybody else is getting so good. And that's going to be the story. So pretty interesting stuff. Let us know your thoughts on any of these topics. Shoot us an email over at upshot@ultiworld.com. Coming up after the break, I'm going to be talking with the Director of Community over at Microsoft, Joey Taralson, who is going to break down the decision to sponsor the Preserve with Microsoft Teams. Stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. You can save $50 right now on the remaining inventory of 2023 Ambassador Octothorpes. So you can get the Ella Hansen, it's a charcoal and black with saffron zippers and purple accents, or you can get the Casey White bag, a multicam Alpine and black with black zippers and OptiFade camo web. I don't even know what OptiFade camo web is, but it sounds pretty sweet. So you can save $50 on those right now while supplies last. Pound manufactures everything in the Pacific Northwest USA with the industry's highest quality standard. Pound is the only bag company with an in-house warranty and repair department that will ensure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Check out all the options at pounddiscgolf.com. The Upshot is presented by Sunset Lake CBD, which is a farm that originally started as a dairy farm producing milk and cream for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. But back in 2019, they diversified to keep up with the times and started growing hemp for CBD. And you got to check this stuff out. Not only do they use all organic fertilizers and sustainable farming techniques, but the quality of the product is awesome. They sent me a box of things, and I got the sleep gummies, which have CBD and a little bit of melatonin. I was having a hard time sleeping a couple nights. Baby was crying a lot. And so I took one of these, and wow, fantastic night of sleep. I felt great the next day. No weird hangover effects or anything like that. So check it out. Go to sunsetlakecbd.com and get in touch with them. If you need to, you can reach out to their customer support folks and you'll talk to a real person. So no AI or any nonsense like that. And they'll help you find a product that fits your needs. Welcome back to the Upshot. Joining us now is the Principal Community Product Manager at Microsoft, Joey Taralson. Joey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, very glad to have you. A kind of bombshell feeling sponsorship announcement last week when we found out that Microsoft Teams would be sponsoring the Preserve. And there was a release of a new kind of disc golf community Teams page where we had, pro players in there and fans could join in and ask, Q&A and all this kind of stuff. And so naturally, I was wondering what's going on here. So what has prompted Microsoft to want to get involved with sponsoring an event on the Pro Tour?
That's a great question. I think the short answer is me.
So, this is always the answer.
So my role at Microsoft as a community program manager, I sit in our product teams right alongside the people that build the software that you use from Microsoft. And my role is really to support the people that use it to amplify their needs as we're making product decisions going forward. and to help identify strategies and partnerships and marketing campaigns that will help grow our user base. So I support the free version of Microsoft Teams that anyone on the planet can use. And we have an area within Teams called communities. And we see a lot of different communities that use the product, from youth sports leagues to religious organizations to school communities. And as part of my role, I have the ability to partner with different organizations and explore activation strategies. And I am a big disc golfer. I've disc golfed for about 10 years. And I attended the Preserve Championship last year. And right afterwards, I just kind of got this idea that, if Kale and Charlie from Gotta Go and the Preserve was interested, that we may be able to do something cool together. And it just kind of built up from there.
So I'm assuming you're in the Minneapolis area or somewhere in Minnesota?
I am, yeah. So I came into Microsoft via a product that was acquired back in 2018 based out of Minneapolis here. So.
Got it. Was that a company that you ran, that you were part of?
I led growth for that. It was a product called Flipgrid. Anybody that was in college recently has maybe used Flipgrid. It's a video tool.
Nice. Okay, cool. So what's your disc golf background?
Well, my buddy Mike invited me to start playing probably about 10 to 12 years ago. And I used to golf a decent amount. Never been good, but I always enjoyed it. and after I had kids, we started disc golfing a lot more because I could get the golf fix in about half the time or less. Just kind of built from there. Seems like with every passing year, got more into it, started following the pro tour, started thinking about attending an event, and then last year attended the Preserve Championship for the first time. So kind of all in now.
I love it. So what were your thoughts attending the Preserve, based on, coming in with whatever expectations you had? What did you make of kind of professional disc golf in the modern era?
Well, I thought it was awesome. I've attended PGA golf tournaments before, and so I kind of had an expectation of what it was like to go to a professional golf event. And my kind of hopes that were proven true is just how approachable professional disc golf is compared to other sports, both from the pros to the tournament experience. I've heard you talk about walking onto Worlds. Just walking through or whatever it was.
Wandering the fairways.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. But that's the experience that you get as a fan. I just think it's so cool how approachable the pros are, how approachable these tournaments are, being able to just follow along with the cards that people that you're interested in. And the Preserve is an incredible setup. The wide fairways, tons of room for spectators, stands in multiple locations. Great holes that are beautiful, that have great ace opportunities. And then you got 18 that has eagle opportunities, risk reward with the water. And it's just fun. It's fun to see people go low in scores, and it's a fun place to be. And I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely awesome. So I reached out to Kale after that, and the rest is history.
So, do you have to take this to a higher up at Microsoft and be like, hey, we want to spend some money to sponsor this disc golf thing for Microsoft Teams? And if so, how does that conversation go? Because I feel like, a lot of times what we have heard, right, with these sponsorship deals happening, the vast majority of them are happening because somebody in the organization is like yourself and has some kind of connection to disc golf or is a fan already. So, what was that like?
Yeah, great question. So, I have a budget every year that is under this bucket of activation partnerships. And it's primarily used in explorations similar to this one. And so when I am working through that budget, I do have a good amount of autonomy when I have an idea of something that I want to explore. For example, last year we partnered with American Youth Soccer to go and do that. But yeah, certainly I kind of presented what I thought was the angle for this. to my manager who's a VP level in Microsoft, and he was all about it. Really, what I said was, I'm a disc golfer, and this is a sport that is not in the mainstream. And with sports that are kind of outside the mainstream, I don't use that in a deprecating way. It's just kind of a fact. They develop these really passionate, highly engaged fans, and I felt like, if we as Microsoft came in and showed support for this community, that we'd get some amount of love back from that. And, if you think about my role with Microsoft Teams, everybody knows that Microsoft Teams is used for work by hundreds of millions of people around the world every single day. But a lot of people aren't aware that there's a free version that is beyond, just meetings like we're on right now, that has, the ability for people to chat with each other, collaborate, share files, schedule meetings among a community. And so I saw this as a really great partnership. And I think probably the biggest thing was that Kale Leviska was excited about it as well. And we started jamming on kind of what activation might look like. Because what was really important to me was that we figured out a way to bring some portion of the community inside Teams into this free area of Teams. And he was all about it, kind of came up with the idea, like, what if we gave, the most passionate fans a behind the scenes look at what life on tour is like for pros, kind of leading up to the Preserve. And I just thought it was an awesome idea. And it was, not a tough sell internally, and, excited to be able to do it.
So I don't need you to divulge the entire Microsoft marketing strategy, but what's the idea? Like, people using the free version, maybe they decide they're like more comfortable taking it to their office, or maybe they're a small business owner that wants to implement a paid version of Teams. Or is there like benefit to Microsoft just from people using the free version at all for, I don't know, data purposes?
Not for data purposes, but we aim to grow. I aim to grow Microsoft Teams as big as possible, and a big growth opportunity for us is in the consumer space outside of the traditional workspace. And when it comes to disc golf, it's really an experimentation in, does the community both latch on to the activation experience that we're putting together inside Teams, but then also disc golf has grown over the years based on community. You look at what the folks out in New Jersey did at Stafford Woods, where that course that they loved was going to go away. They rallied, they got together, and they made change happen. And we had something very similar happen here in Minneapolis with a course called Kenwood Trails. And we have a platform that can help that, whether you're organizing leagues, whether you're organizing an initiative to save a beloved, disc golf course near you. I thought it'd be cool for us to, partner in with disc golf and really show people that this is a platform that is there to support them, that is free for them to use. And that's basically the idea behind it, and would be a fun experience for fans.
All right. So we had the chess.com CEO on here a couple weeks ago talking about the sponsorship that they put together for the first Pro Tour stop of the season. And he said, basically, like, we don't really expect positive ROI from this, which, I think was like a very honest answer. And, chess maybe has less of an I would say definitely has less of an obvious connection compared to something like Teams, where like there in fact are disc golf clubs and disc golf communities that already exist in various online spaces. Right. We have a Discord, right, which is more or less a Teams competitor, Yeah. So do you see true ROI opportunity here? I mean, I think that's one of the interesting things to track is like, is this a real opportunity that you see as like, yeah, this is like good money spent, not just, disc golf money?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. And, ROI for us is more than just marketing, eyeballs, people signing up to use the product. Because I'm part of the product team, my role is really helping our product builders understand decisions that they can make to help improve the odds of people choosing to use our products. Again, we're in the consumer space. We rely on choice. You chose to use Discord for your kind of VIP insider community. And so honestly, learnings out of this partnership are just important as what we get out of, people talking about it or tweeting about it or mentioning it on DGN during the live broadcast. What we can learn about, people coming into the product, using it as part of this fan experience that we're putting together, what sort of traction we get, that's equally as valuable to us as anything else. And so I think when I think of ROI, it's really around the product activation experience as much, if not more than it is about, number of eyeballs we get or number of people that we get into the funnel to potentially use the product.
Sure. How do you feel like the response has been so far? I literally downloaded the Teams app for the first time on my phone, and I got into the zone. So are you happy with the response?
Yeah, I think it's been fantastic. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I certainly definitely expected some of the memes and replies to the social posts that came out. There was a great one around at the preserve, replacing those quiet please signs with mute yourself signs, which I thought was just brilliant. But yeah, I think there's, almost 400 fans that have joined this community. And really what we see, we have other kind of influencer or creators that are using Teams for their VIP community, similar to how you're using Discord. And what they see is like the super fans, the biggest fans are the ones that join that community. And we're seeing that in Teams. It's the people that, collect trading cards of professional disc golfers, that buy all of the signature discs for their favorite pros, not just one. And so it's been wonderful. We've got AB's AMA coming out this morning. It should be out any moment now. And then we've got a big one on tap for our next AMA that we're going to announce tomorrow.
There is something cool about it. I mean, like AMAs, right? We've seen those on Reddit in the disc golf subreddit for years. But I don't know, there's something different about having like the player's name rather than just a handle, and a photo of them rather than just text. I don't know why, but it does feel more personal. It feels like you're like in like a group chat with the professional players. And maybe that's just purely because of like the UI, but it surprisingly feels more intimate than a lot of the other interactions that you can end up having with players. It's totally different, I feel like, than being on their Instagram comments.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And that's exactly what we were going for, and what Kale and I kind of thought may be the case is professional disc golfers, of all the professional sports, are probably the most approachable people, and such interesting personalities and interesting backgrounds that they come from all over the world. And we just thought it would be cool to kind of put together this space that fans that are really passionate about the sport, follow along, play fantasy disc golf like I do, could get together and hang out with the pros, in a little bit more of a casual kind of, we're part of the same group chat type experience. Now, I don't expect, Teams to replace Reddit or replace Discord or replace the millions of Facebook groups that are out there for disc golf fans. But, we just thought it could be something a little bit different that would be fun to experiment with and, provide an engaging experience for fans. And I think it's been awesome so far.
All right, Joey. Well, you got to make your player of the year predictions since you're here, and you obviously follow the tour.
I do. All right. So I'm going to go with Gannon.
All right.
I mean, he's just been on fire early. Watched all of WACO down the stretch. I got Antala on my fantasy team.
Oh, man.
And my buddy Mike has Gannon on his fantasy team. So that was a little bit painful, but I got nothing but love for Gannon. I think I can announce this. I guess he is our next featured guest for our AMA that we're going to be announcing tomorrow. So I guess you heard it here first. Fresh off of his win at WACO, he'll be our next guest. So that's pretty exciting.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was an awesome tournament. It was an awesome finish. And he is the winningest player on tour over the last 2 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think the FPO player of the year, Kristen Tattar, probably is.
Yeah. If we're talking about across divisions, there's no question. I don't need a calculator for that one.
That's right.
Yeah, you gonna stick with Kristen for FPO, POTY?
No doubt. No doubt. Funny story. We don't even allow anyone to draft Kristen in our fantasy league.
I don't blame you.
Trump card.
We changed our rules for our draft this year on the show because she was too. I mean, she still went number 1 overall, but she's less powerful than she was a year ago because we changed our rules.
Cheat code.
It feels unfair. It's like whoever gets the first pick just automatically wins the league.
Yep, that's right.
All right, Joey. So, very cool. So how do people get into this teams if they want to check it out?
Yeah, for sure. So it's aka.ms/disc golf tour talk. We'll get you in there. Download the mobile app, go to that link, and it should bring you right in there. It's super easy. You can log in with any personal email address or your phone number. And like I said, we'll be announcing Gannon Burr for the next AMA, I think tomorrow. And we got AB's AMA videos coming up shortly here. So.
All right, fantastic. Well, Joey, appreciate you giving us some time, and really excited to see another big serious brand get involved with disc golf. So I know disc golfers appreciate it for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Excited we can do this.
Us too. Thanks so much.
All right.
Joey Taralson with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. Thanks again to Joey Taralson for joining us. Very interesting to see about this Microsoft Teams thing. You know, like I said last week, it's hard to know whether this is going to stick as like a community gathering space and pro players using it regularly. But obviously, if it's curated the way that it is right now, with the AB Ask Me Anything, and then obviously he mentioned that Gannon's going to do one coming up soon, you know, players will engage in that way. And it really is kind of a cool universe to be like in a shared chat space with the pro players. So, you know, check it out if you're interested. And let's see how this AB AMA goes. PurseWatch for WACO. $103,000 purse, just a little bit over 103. $69,240 in MPO, $33,960 in FPO. That's $12,000 to Gannon Burr to winning the MPO side, $8,000 to Kristen winning FPO. Across the board increases for everything for WACO, up 28.4% from last year. The 2023 purse was just over $80K, so they bump it up by about $20,000. And you know what a glow up for WACO, which had the lowest Elite Series payout 2 years ago in 2022. And, you know, now whether that's due to increased spectator ticket sales or better sponsorship opportunities, more support from the Pro Tour, they've now moved up to, you know, being over that 100K mark is going to put you in good company. So we will see what happens moving forward, but it is about $12,000 more than what we saw at chess.com last weekend, and a really nice bump from last year in 2023. Picks, Josh dominated. Josh absolutely dominated. He had Gannon and Kristen winning this thing, so he gets the big fat points for all of that. He missed with Ricky and Kyle on his podium, and Ella and Missy in FPO. Obviously, those players all played pretty well, but not enough to be on the podium. I only scored one measly point. I had Kristen on my podium, but not winning. You know, Josh really keeps it simple. If Kristen's playing, he picks Kristen. And you know what? Why not do that? That is definitely the expected value maximizing play. I had Evelina and Ella on my podium. Did not work out for me, though they were close, 4th and 6th. And then on my MPO podium, I had Cole Riddell and Kevin Jones and Kyle Klein. Again, like not terrible picks. Like, where did Cole ended up? 15th. Kyle was 7th. Kevin Jones, on the other hand, I don't really want to talk about it. But not a great start for me on the picks to start the season, but we'll take the L and move on. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Upshot. We got a quick turnaround to another tournament coming up. We've got the Open at Austin next weekend, just down the road from WACO. And so looking forward to breaking it all down with you on Thursday, as this probably was the worst course on tour last year, Harvey Penick. So I am pretty curious to see what kind of alterations, improvements that have been made, because this was probably the most forgettable event, the worst course, just kind of like a not great all around. It had the lowest payout last year. So can they turn this Austin tournament into a winner? I think there's some pressure on this tournament this year, to be honest with you. So more on that on Thursday. Josh may be back on Thursday as well, TBD. So we'll let you know. But appreciate you being with me and looking forward to breaking it all down. We'll have a live react show on Sunday following the Open at Austin. But of course, before then, we'll see you on Thursday right here on the Upshot.